There you are now. Welcome back to the workshop. So in today's episode, we're going to be stripping down this Cooper S motor, and I'm going to be showing you some of the intricacies, and I'm also going to be asking you guys some questions. So stand by and hopefully help me out in that. This motor you may or may not recognize if you had seen the HRE Uncut. If you haven't, I'll put a link to it up here in the corner now and you can see it. This has been a while in the process, but it is now coming up on the job card, and it's time to start breaking this motor down and getting it ready to go off to potentially be machined, which is certainly, I think, going to be needed. The minimum that we're going to need here is to get this crank off, get the flywheel and primary gear on, and the front pulley on, and then get this crank off to be balanced. But I'm pretty sure the motor is also going to need some work. Now, I've been looking at this engine, and as we break it down, I'm going to try and show you as many of the intricacies of a Cooper S engine versus a 1275 A series engine. The things that I've noticed anyway as I'm breaking this down. If you guys can come up with any other stuff or want to tell me about any other stuff, I'd love to hear about it in the comment section down below. I just want to take this moment also to give a shout out to Classic Mini Breakdown. It's a podcast that I'll put a link to down in the description below. I just finished up the other day doing a interview with him, and that will be going live on the 16th of this month, May. So get over to Classic Mini Breakdown. As I said, I'll put a link in the description below. Get your AirPods in and have a listen. We had a great old chat and it was actually really good fun. So you guys might enjoy that. And you'll hear some questions that he put to me that I haven't talked about on the channel before, and they will be over there. So have a look at that. So the first order of operations always when I'm stripping down a motor is to assess it, have a look at what I can see first of all, and then start taking it apart. So I can see straight away when I look at this engine that somebody has been in here and somebody has done a significant amount of work to this engine. I would say it has been race prepared. Some of the reasons that I would believe that, if we look, the holes here in the bottom of the block that would hold the engine to the gearbox have been enlarged to 5/16. They've gone up to 5/16 in size, and that would be UNF, 5/16 UNF. They've been threaded up to it. Another thing, if we can get over here, I'm going to give you a shot of it, is that the oil drilling, so there would have been a drilling went down there for the oil relief or the pressure relief. It's part of the pressure relief setup. Would normally have had a brass bung in it. That brass bung has been taken out. The hole that it would be in has been threaded, and they have put a cap head grub screw down in there. So that certainly is a sign that it has been done. This is one that I am not sure of. The center main strap here is machined off flat. I don't know if that's the way they were from the factory as an S, and this is one of the questions I want to put to you guys on the channel. Let me know. I haven't seen enough S engines to know that. The last S engine I built was one of the thick flange blocks, and it had a raised cap. So I think this one has been machined. I don't think this is standard, but let me know. Maybe it is something that is standard. I'm not sure. I can see that the conrods here have been lightened, so somebody has machined these conrods. I haven't been able to get a good look to see are they S conrods or 1275 GT conrods, but we'll get them out in a few minutes and we'll get a good look to see if they are. But definitely they've been turned on a lathe to lighten them, and the cap here has been lightened by somebody who's run a milling cutter across the cap to lighten it. So that is certainly something, another modification that's been done that looks racy. If we look here at the side of the block, there would normally be a brass bung in here. This is the main oil gallery, runs across the front of the block. And you can see here that somebody has pulled out the brass bung and has drilled it and threaded it. Another thing that I noticed here is there's a helicoil gone in here. So this is one of the retaining bolt holes for the triangle plate for the cam. And I can see very clearly there's two different threads. There's a thread that has been pulled, and then there's a helicoil in there. I would definitely not be happy with a helicoil in this. So one of the things we're going to do as part of fixing this engine block is we'll bore that out. We'll thread it 5/16. We might even go up as far as 9/16, thread it, then we'll re-drill it and tap it to the correct thread for the cam triangle plate, the truss washer for the cam triangle plate. Critical threads like that I would never be happy with a helicoil in. Alright, so let's get these pistons and con rods out, and then we can start having a look at those and seeing what we're dealing with there. Alrighty then, we'll get these couple of nuts out. So stuff I'm seeing already, you know, that just kind of tricks my mind a little bit. There's two different nuts being used on these con rods. That's a flange nut from a later 1275 A plus engine, and that's the original non-flanged nut that would have been used in the earlier A engines. So I'm starting to think that more than likely these aren't S rods, and I don't think it's an S crank. I think this is a GT crank. That is what I think it is. So S block with some dabblings of other engines in there. Just get my copper hammer, and then I'll be able to start wiggling out some of these pistons. So what I always do is I always do these one at a time. I'll take off the cap and then drive down the piston until I can kind of clearly get a handle on it, and then just send it out the bottom of the bore. And before going near anything else, just cap for that rod back on, and then put the nut back on. And I even know which nut came off which side, because what I do is I just place them all along the block, as you can see here. So that's number 2, number 3, number 4, that side, number 2, number 3, number 4, that side. And that way I easily know. So we'll get each piston out first, and then when we have each piston out, we can have a look and see what we have. So, repeating the process. Cap on the same way. And just barely just run the nut down so that we know which nut came off which side of which cap. Lay the pistons out on the bench. Obviously I've all the nuts off. You can see them laying out. And then just leave the cap sitting there, ready for me to pick it up. Now if you were keeping the bearings, you're going to reuse the bearings. Don't leave the cap sitting there on the edge of the block, because the sharp edge of the block could damage the bearing. If it was the case that you were going to reuse the bearings, or you thought you might reuse the bearings, better just leave the cap up that way. I know for a fact I will not be reusing the bearings on these, so no problem for me to leave the cap sitting that way. Okay. Little shout out to all the new subscribers. Great having all the new people coming into the channel. I see them filtering in every day. You're all very welcome. Thank you for coming along. I hope you're enjoying the channel, and I hope you are enjoying what we're doing, where the direction of the channel has been going. Thank you, by the way, also to everybody who has been so supportive of the Landy content. I know some of you people are mini people and probably don't have an interest in Landies, but you've been supporting and enjoying watching the videos of me working on it as well, which I really do appreciate, because it affords me the opportunity to use the time that I do videoing to work on the Landy, which is something that obviously I have a great passion and joy for as well. So thank you for that. Okay, let's have a look at these rods and see what have we got. So first glance, what do we see? Let's look at the part numbers. So the part numbers for these rods are 12G 1298, I think. Yeah, 12G 1298, which I am 99.9% sure is a 1275 GT rod, or a rod from an A plus GT engine. So these will be EN16T is what they'll be. They have been lightened, definitely. There's been some lightening work done. Let's have a look and see what size bearings the big ends are on. Let's pop off one of these caps and see what size bearing they're on. So if you ever want to try and get a bearing out of a cap really easily, the simple way to do it is to hold the cap between your two thumbs and your forefinger and just press the bearing out with your thumbs. That's a great way of getting a bearing out without damaging it or doing damage to the cap. Okay, so the measurement for your bearings will always be written on the cap here with the writing. So these are ACL bearings, I think. They have a glacier stamp on them. And it would look to me like they are plus 10 tau. And it has US, so that's telling us 10 thousandths in inches as opposed to metric. So yeah, they're on plus 10 tau. So they're plus 10,000 oversized bearings. Interestingly, let's take out the bearing and have a look at the cap fitment. So what would I be looking for here to see if this is a serviceable rod? Things that I look for on serviceable rods, one is that the fit of the cap. So see the way that just falls on there real nicely like that. That is what I expect. That's what I want. If you get a cap that it's very hard or very tight to get the cap down with the bolt in place, what that's telling you is that potentially the cap is splaying out, it's ovalating, the cap has changed shape. And that is very common and would mean that it would make the cap probably unserviceable. These rods, what they have at the end of the bolt is a step. You can see just down here, there's a little step at the very end. And that's what lines the cap up to the rod. So this part here, this part of the thread here, is not a tight fit on the cap. You can see we've got play there. But as you get down here to the base, you see that step, and that step is what's going to line it up. So the cap will fall on till it gets to the step, and then it'll get tight. So we'll get the cap together. And what are we checking for? We're checking for, and this is before we obviously dial gauge. We will dial gauge the cap. But we're going to put the cap down, and we're going to check to see if, well, we'll put the cap on the right way around first, Paul. It's me showing you guys and forgetting what I'm doing. Okay, so put the cap on the right way around. Tap it down just to make sure that it's nice and tight. And we're checking here for a step. So where the cap and the rod meet, that plunge line there, we're checking to see if there's any step, and we're feeling it with our nail. So if we're picking up a step there, that is the first sign of wear in the cap. So there's a little bit there on that one. It's very little, but there is just a little small bit. What we would do is we'd run a file on that and see if we still pick it up. But we'll dial gauge this cap to see if we any ovulation. If we have ovulation on the cap, then these caps will have to get line honed to bring them back into center. Okay, next thing to look at is the little ends. Have the little ends been worked? It looks like they have. It looks like there's been machining. Now, until we take the piston off completely, it'll be hard to tell how much has been done. But yes, I think the little ends have been worked, because on these GT rods, normally there's a tang that sticks out of here. So there'll be a kind of a tang sticking out there, and there'll be one sticking out of there. And we can see that somebody's gone in there and hogged it off with a grinder or something like that. Wouldn't be mad happy about that work there. We'll have to do some finishing work on the ends of those rods to bring them into truity and make them nice looking. There has been turning done obviously on the rods. They've been in a lathe and somebody has turned them to lighten the little ends. The work looks reasonably well. I really don't know why they didn't just skim the top off the cap, like leaving this sort of channel here. There's no real need for it. The lighter you can get the little end, the better. So I'd normally just clear that off. I wouldn't leave those two channels like that, but maybe they thought they were adding a little bit of strength to the cap by doing it or something, so possibly. What are the pistons? Let's have a look. Okay, so these pistons have a part number on them, 21251, which is a AE, Glacier AE Van der Waal piston, and it is plus 20 thousandths, so it's on a 20 tau oversize, which is great. That's good news. The block hasn't been very heavily bored, and they look, to be honest with you, like they've never run. I think they are dead standard. I think, well, not dead standard, they're 20 tau oversized, but they don't look like they've ever run. So I think these pistons have been fitted, but the engine has never run. Now, I'm going to chat with the customer. I had a talk with them already. I wouldn't be mad happy about these pistons. I'm not a lover of them. They're fine, they do their job, but they're a cast piston and they're made to a budget. Well, I wouldn't say they're cheap. They're not cheap because they're about 200 and odd quid a set. But what I would be more inclined to do is I'd be inclined to talk to the customer and ask him if he'd be happy to let me pass on these pistons. He can sell them himself or we can sell them for him here in the shop and allow us to change these for something like a cast Omega. It'll be a much better piston, last for a longer period of time and keep inside its tolerances better. In my opinion, that's the engine. When I build an engine like that, that's what I'd want to do. But I'll have a chat with the customer and see what he thinks. Okie dokie. So, after that, we want to just check, make sure all the rods are at least the same part number. So that one is the same. That one is the same. And that one is the same. So that's good news. We have at least a matched set of rods. We don't have a matched set of rod bolts, which is why I got nervous and wanted to check to see all different nuts on the different rods, which in itself is not the end of the world, but even that can be a big difference in balance. Just that much could be a difference in balance and throw this engine off and just make it slightly less reliable. The good news is the bearings also look like they haven't been run. The bearings look like they're dead fresh and haven't been used. So that's interesting. Okay, next thing I want to get out is the crank, so we can have a look at this crankshaft and see what we're dealing with there. Okay, so this is the crank, and having a look at it, I think it's going to be on 1010, because it looks like someone wrote in yellow paint here, 10,000, 10,000. The crank is a 12G 1505. That's what it is. It's a 12G 1505 crank, which is a 1275 A crank out of something like a 1275 GT or any of the 1275 later motors. It'll be EN16T. It won't be hardened. It hasn't been lightened, wedged, balanced, but it has been no, it hasn't. It hasn't been drilled, but it has been ground, and they haven't relieved the holes, which is no good. So these holes in the crankshaft here, these are the oil passages that take oil from the center main bearing and shoot them out to the big ends. These are razor sharp and have a borer around the edge of them, which is terrible, absolutely bad. This would destroy the engine bearings in no time whatsoever. They'd pick up on the engine bearings and destroy it. Okay, so the crank hasn't been machined in any other way. Now, what is the taper like? It's had a day of rust, that's for sure. But the good news is all the surfaces do look like they are salvageable. They have a bit of rust there, but it hasn't actually pitted. It's not a hole. It's surface rust, which is good. We don't want pitting or holes there, because that's where the primary gear is going to run. And if we had pitting or holes there, well, the next step is going to be that the primary gear will pick up and it'll run its bronze bearing that's in there. So this is a non-filleted or rolled radius crankshaft. Basically, these are the earlier crankshafts, so there's no filleting or rolling in the radius here. The later crankshafts, they brought this in where they filleted the radiuses in here, which was a stress riser. This is where cranks were breaking. So if this was a race motor we were building, that would be something that I would get done. I'd get these radiuses here filleted. And what that would do is it would allow the crank to be tougher and stronger and less likely to break. I can show you here on this crankshaft what I'm talking about. So this is a machined or worked crankshaft, and you can see that filleted radius there. So you can see where it's gone down into the crank. We've got that kind of crevasse in there. And what that is that's taking out the stress riser there at the corner of the bearing journal. So you can see it across all the bearing journals, even the main bearing journals have it done. Whereas if we look at the crank, if we look at this crank here, we can see that we don't have that. In fact, we have a sort of a sharp edge. You can just hear that here picking up on the end of the screwdriver there. Bring my mic closer. And it's that sharp edge, that high spot there is where the cranks used to fail and break, because they are a stress riser and it brings stress into the crankshaft. So I think this crank is on 1010. We know that the big end bearings were marked as 10. Let's pop out one of the bearings from the main bearing housings here and have a look. See what are we dealing with. Okay, so they are the AE Glacier Van de Waal bearing, and they are plus 10 as well, US, so it's 10,000s. 10,000s oversized. Okay, again, these bearings look fairly fresh, but we've a witness mark. See this witness mark here? So we have a cleanness here, and then we have a pickup here, and we've got a pickup here, a tightness in the bearing. So what's that telling us? That's telling us that there's something not right here. There's something hasn't worked out. I'd be penny to the pound that the problem is there was dirt underneath the back of the bearing, or something rising up the back of the bearing, because you can see this isn't clean at all here. So what I think we will do is we'll bring this up to the Colchester, and we will clip the top of this cap, and we'll run the hone through to bring this all back into spec again, or bring that bearing cap back into spec, because I think we have some ovality going on, because we can clearly see that that bearing has been pressing hard there. All right, now we will need to do a lot of measuring before we do that, and I'm going to do a video specifically on measuring every component of this engine up before we make any decisions on how we send it out to the machine shop and what we're going to do. Interesting on that center main bearing, I'm pretty sure that is an aftermarket machining job that's happened. One thing that worries me a little is somebody's drilled a hole as well in the cap and threaded it. That's why I wondered, was that something from the factory? Interestingly, all of these caps, this is something I just noticed, and again, this is a question for you, the viewers. Is this an S thing? All these caps are stamped with a number, 9395. And that number corresponds to a stamping here in the block. So stamped here on the block, 9395. And that's on those three bearings. I don't know if that's the machine, the person who built this engine last before me, the preparer, whether that was something he did, or whether that was something from the factory. Now, I have just noticed something. This is live on camera. It's something that I've literally just noticed now. We have a very big problem. This engine block, unfortunately, I'm going to get you some light. Has run into a very big problem. The center main bearing casting has failed, and that is why we've seen that rubbing that was going on. So we can see a crack that has formed here across the top of the block, and that crack has run all the way down the block here, has run across, run up this side, run across here and into the dipstick hole. Ah, that's terrible. That unfortunately spells complete disaster for this. This engine block is unrepairable, unfortunately. Another Cooper S engine block is going to bite the dust. It's not something that could be welded, because the crack is so totalitarian. It's all the way down as far as the liner, and it's all the way up here. Genuinely, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm actually gutted. This is something that really, really, really upsets me. This is a problem that I think was caused not by the engine, but I think this is a problem whereby there was stuff down in the treads. The bolt was torqued and created hydraulic pressure down in the bottom of the threaded portion. Now, I don't know this. I can't prove this, unfortunately. But my gut feeling is that's what's happened, because it looks like this failure has started here in this bolt and has worked its way down here into the engine block. And that failure is, I think, hydraulicking. The bolt was tightened down, torqued, and there was fluid down in there. Hydraulic pressure built up to an immense pressure. It could be thousands of psi, and has failed that. Either that or the engine had a catastrophic failure at some stage that we don't know about and has damaged this. So unfortunately, I'm going to have a phone call with the customer who owns this engine block, and we have some hard decisions to make. What are we going to do going forward? I do have an A+ block that I can donate to this customer. It won't be an S, unfortunately. So I suppose that's the best time as any to finish up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed following along. This is real, guys. It's not staged. This is the first time I've stripped this block. It isn't staged. I've literally found this failure on camera live with you guys. You can probably hear and see the visual dismay that I felt, because this unfortunately is a major setback for this customer. As I said, I hope you enjoyed coming along and seeing the video. This is real life in my workshop. This is how it goes. This is what we do. We get engines from customers and we try and rebuild them. We try and build cars for customers. We try and service stuff. This is what it is all about. I want to put a big shout out to everybody on the channel. We have just gone over 2,000 subscribers. It is May. I am blown away. I cannot believe in my wildest dreams that 2,000 of you amazing people are tuning in on a weekly basis to watch me mucking around here in the garage with Minis and Land Rovers and machining, drilling, cutting, welding, whatever it is we do. I am chuffed. I am completely chuffed. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for all of your support. The support on Ko-Fi has been amazing. Thank you to everybody who has donated. Phenomenal. We've actually just put in an order for a new part for our camera. It's called a grip. It gives us 2 batteries which can go onto our camera, and that is going to allow us, when motorsport season starts up very soon, to be able to go on track with you guys and film for the whole day. Before, we would have had trouble because we would have ran out of battery on our camera, and power in these situations sometimes is hard to find. So we were trying to think of all different ideas of getting an inverter or buying a generator or whatever. But thanks to your support on Ko-Fi, we are at the stage now where we have enough money that we can dump it straight back in the channel, buy the grip, and have 2 batteries, another SD card, and we can head to track with you and bring you there, show you everything that's going on. So thank you so much for that support. As I said, thank you so much for the 2K as well. Another thing that I want to mention here is that we are really close on the merchandise now. The order is coming through. In fact, one of the items landed today. Another couple of items to land hopefully this week, or maybe early next week. As soon as they land and we're happy with them, the shop is finished, it's done, it's ready to go live. So as soon as the merch lands and we have a look at it and we're happy, then we will launch the shop and you guys will be able to get on there and get some of the really cool pieces of kit that's out there. We have some really nice designs, and we have some more designs coming in from sponsors of the channel and people who have donated some graphics. So watch out for that. That's going to be fun. I want to just give another quick shout out as well to the amazing positive feedback on the engine lifting hook, or hook as it said here in Dublin. We'll have to get that on t-shirt, I think, won't we? Yeah, lift it with our hook. The feedback on that was brilliant. So I have gone ahead and I have contacted my steel merchant, and he is giving me back a price on the steel. I now just need to work out my time, how long it's going to take me to make these, and I need to work out a plan for a bit of jig work. Somebody from Classic Mini DIY, from Cole's channel, Classic Mini DIY, he has a Patreon, and in that Patreon which by the way is brilliant. His Patreon is really good. He offers so much help, advice and support to his viewers in that. He has a Discord chat, and in that Discord chat somebody said, oh, we could do a drawing for Paul. They watched my video that you guys watched about the lifting hook and said, oh, we can do a drawing, and he has sent me an actual CAD 3D drawing of the hook and worked out the measurements himself from as I spoke, and we've checked those off the drawing. So thank you so much to the chap that did that. Thank you very, very, very much. I am going to get the pre-order up very soon. I just don't want to put the pre-order up until I have shipping worked out and until I have a price that I know is realistic that I can stick to. And then I also have to work out a time frame as to when I can make those lifting hooks and get them done. And I want to make a video with you guys of me making the hook and testing it, because I'm going to test it so that you know the thing you're getting isn't just a half deal job. It's going to be tested to way over the lifting strength. I've actually worked out, I've got the brains of my dad involved, and we've come up with an idea of a way of testing it so that we can actually say each lifting hook has been tested to a certain amount of force. So that will be all really interesting. We'll make a video on that. Gretel, by the way, just a very quick update. Very little has happened on Gretel, and that is because panels. Floors at the moment, Gretel's going to need a full floor, and floors at the moment I think we've been told is a 9 or 12 week waiting time. Another channel that you guys are probably watching has been in a similar situation. Mark Draper, who's restoring a Mark III Cooper S over on Keith Miller's channel, is also in the same boat as me. So unfortunately Gretel's a bit stalled at the moment because of no panels, and there is absolutely no point in taking her out of a roll in the shell and taking her apart anymore until I have panels. But fingers crossed panels come in the next couple of weeks, and then as soon as they come we can lash back into Gretel and get her going. So I think that's everything I have to say. Don't forget, if you are new to the channel, thank you very much for coming along and watching our videos. I see you all trickling in over the last couple of weeks. It is brilliant. Please take a look around at some of the other videos on the channel, and if you enjoyed them, hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out and gets us there. Everyone who's watching the video, if you enjoyed it, please hit a like on the like section down below. Even though I know this is terrible bad news that an engine block is broke, but the likes do help us, guys. They get the channel out there and they get the viewership in, which helps us to make more videos and come back to you guys regularly. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for coming along, and if you've stayed all the way and listened to all that waffle, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. See you guys on the next one.